Welcome to another episode of My Weird Prompts, an AI-generated podcast featuring the random prompts of Daniel Rosehill as answered by a revolving cast of friendly AI characters. Join us for deep dives into AI, technology, and whatever other random thing Daniel finds fascinating today. Subscribe on Spotify or your favorite podcatcher. Now, today's episode.
This episode was generated using artificial intelligence. Please verify facts.
Hey Herman and Corn, so in a previous episode I was talking about having some IP cameras at home, and we have a mixture of Reolink, which I highly recommend as a manufacturer, and TP-Link. I mentioned we put these up to keep an eye on our dear son, Ezra, who is crawling and doing all sorts of things around the house, so we have a couple of these. When I was looking for IP cameras, the first thing I look for is whether they support streaming over RTSP and ONVIF support. If you have these two things, you can integrate them into an NVR system for monitoring. And there's an excellent open source one called Frigate that justifiably has become very popular. There's other ones as well. Blue Iris is probably the best known in the non-open source world, was the caveat that it only runs on Windows. But you have either off-the-box NVR systems, hardware NVRs supplied by companies, or you can pretty easily run them on your own server. But you need the camera to be able to talk in an open language and not just broadcast through its app. Like a lot of people, I imagine, I'm happy with running local IP cameras for this purpose, baby monitoring, but I'm very uncomfortable with the idea of that video feed leaving the network and potentially being vulnerable or seen by anyone. So to try to mitigate against these apps, on the one hand you have to think these apps are not necessarily malicious. I'm talking about the configuration apps that TP-Link and Reolink provide. There's a genuine reason that they exist for the majority of customers who just want to do it as simply as possible, and that's fine for them, the app relay. But for those who are more maybe adverse to privacy or concerned about this idea, I think the optimal position might be a best of both worlds approach. The app is just there to change settings, to update firmware, to install the thing, and if you're viewing, you're not going through external servers, because that involves relaying the traffic. Now, I used a program called Wireshark, which I'd love to touch on in this episode, for the first time, which for those who haven't heard about, Wireshark is basically a network monitor. You don't see, it's not a snooping tool, although I'm sure it can be used in that context. You don't see what people are doing on your network, but you do see the protocols being moved around the network. So if you had a IP address streaming a lot of data for video to an IP address that resolved to China, it would kind of stick out, or that's the idea. Little Ezra is making a squeak at that thought. So Herman and Corn, I have a question for you. For those who want to use some kind of an IP camera like this, and we want to feel that we know exactly where the video is going and not going, do you have to move away entirely from these consumer IP camera ecosystems like TP-Link and Reolink, or is there a way to get that intermediate thing? Because sometimes in these apps, if you disconnect from the local network and you see that they're showing video, by definition there's some kind of video proxy going on, and if you don't know exactly how that's working, you don't know where the data is. Herman and Corn, let's talk about the security and privacy considerations in IP camera systems, especially those used in a home context for security, baby monitoring, or even Ring doorbells. Over to you two.
Hey everyone, welcome back to My Weird Prompts. We're coming to you from our usual spot here in Jerusalem. It's February 20th, 2026, and the air is finally starting to lose that winter bite. I'm Corn, and I've been thinking a lot lately about how our homes are becoming increasingly, well, let's just say chatty. Every device, from the toaster to the baby monitor, seems to have a lot to say to servers halfway across the world.
Herman Poppleberry here, and you're not wrong, Corn. It's the classic trade-off of the mid-2020s, convenience versus autonomy. We want things to just work, but the price of just working is often a constant stream of telemetry and video data leaving our front door. Today's prompt from Daniel really hits the nail on the head regarding this specific tension in the world of home security cameras. He's asking if we can have our cake and eat it too. Keep the cheap, high-quality hardware but kill the invasive cloud.
It's a great question because it's not just about being paranoid anymore. It's about understanding the architecture of the tools we use to protect our families. Daniel mentioned he's using TP-Link Tapo and Reolink cameras to keep an eye on his son, Ezra. And he's hitting that classic wall. He likes the hardware. He loves the price point, especially compared to the enterprise stuff. But he's rightly skeptical of the app-first, cloud-centric ecosystem. He wants to know if there is an intermediate approach.
Right, and the core of his question is whether there's a middle ground. Do you have to go full tinfoil hat and build everything from scratch using industrial sensors and enterprise software like Axis or Hanwha, which can cost 5 times as much, or can you take these consumer-grade devices and, let's say, domesticate them? Can we keep the glass and the sensors but sever the umbilical cord to the manufacturer's servers?
I love that framing. Domesticating the hardware. Because, let's be honest, companies like Reolink and TP-Link make some pretty impressive hardware for the price. We're talking 4K resolution, incredible night vision, and power over Ethernet capabilities for under $100. It's hard to beat that value proposition. But as Daniel noted, if you can see your camera feed on your phone while you're at the grocery store without any setup, that data is going through a relay server.
Exactly. It's either a direct peer-to-peer connection, which is technically difficult to pull off reliably across different network types, or it's being proxied. And in 2026, with the way these companies have consolidated their cloud services, it's almost always the latter. So, to answer the high-level part of Daniel's prompt, yes, there is absolutely an intermediate approach. You don't have to throw the cameras in the trash, but you do have to change how you think about your home network. You have to stop being a user and start being a network administrator.
Okay, let's start with the why. Why do these cameras want to talk to the cloud so badly? Is it just for the app experience, or is there something deeper happening?
It's a mix of 3 things: NAT traversal, storage revenue, and data harvesting. Let's talk about NAT traversal first. NAT, or network address translation, is what your router does to allow 20 devices in your house to share one public internet address. For an outside device, like your phone on a cellular network, to talk to a camera inside your house, the router usually blocks that incoming request for security reasons. It doesn't know which device the request is for.
Right, because otherwise, anyone on the internet could just knock on your digital door and start poking at your devices.
Precisely. So, to get around this, the camera phones home. It reaches out to the manufacturer's server and says, "Hey, I'm here, I'm alive, and here's my internal address." When you open the app on your phone, the app asks the same server, "Where's my camera?" The server then acts as a matchmaker. In the best case scenario, it helps the 2 devices talk directly. In the worst case scenario, which is common, it acts as a relay, passing every single byte of video traffic through its own servers.
And that's where the privacy concern lives. If that server is the middleman, the manufacturer technically has the keys to the kingdom. Even if they claim it's end-to-end encrypted, you're trusting their implementation. We've seen enough glitches in the last few years where people could see into other people's living rooms to know that trust is a fragile thing.
Exactly. And Daniel mentioned using Wireshark to see where the data is going. That's such a Herman move, I love it. For those who don't know, Wireshark is a packet sniffer. It lets you see every single packet of data moving across your network. If you see a massive stream of encrypted UDP traffic heading to an IP address in a different country when you're just trying to watch your baby sleep, that's the relay in action. It's the digital equivalent of sending a letter to your neighbor by mailing it to a processing center 3 states away.
So, how do we stop it? Daniel mentioned 2 acronyms that I think are the keys to the kingdom here, RTSP and ONVIF. Let's break those down, because they are the open languages that make domestication possible.
RTSP stands for Real-Time Streaming Protocol. Think of it as the standard way for a device to broadcast a video stream over a local network. It's been around since the late 90s. If a camera supports RTSP, it means you don't need their proprietary app to see the video. Any software that speaks RTSP like VLC player or a local NVR can tune in to that camera's frequency.
And ONVIF, I see that on spec sheets all the time, usually with a bunch of profiles. like Profile S or Profile T?
ONVIF is the Open Network Video Interface Forum. While RTSP handles the video stream itself, ONVIF handles the everything else. It's the control layer. It's how you tell the camera to pan or tilt, how you check the status of the motion sensor, or how you sync the clock. Profile S is the basic one for video streaming. Profile T is for advanced things like H.265 compression and motion handling. If a camera is ONVIF compliant, it's basically saying, I am a standardized citizen of the security world. You can control me with any standard software.
This is the crucial part of Daniel's intermediate approach. By choosing cameras that support these protocols, and both Reolink and many of the TP-Link Tapo cameras do, you've already won half the battle. You've bought hardware that can speak a universal language, even if the manufacturer prefers you use their dialect in the app.
Right. But just because they can speak that language doesn't mean they stop whispering to the mothership in the background. This is where the actual work begins. To truly secure these cameras, you have to implement what I call the digital quarantine.
I assume this involves more than just not installing the app on your phone?
Much more. The first step is to give the cameras a place to talk where no one else is listening. This is where a local network video recorder, or NVR, comes in. Daniel mentioned Frigate and Blue Iris. These are the heavy hitters in the self-hosted world.
I've heard you rave about Frigate before. It's open source, right? How does it handle the heavy lifting of AI detection without sending frames to the cloud?
It's brilliant. Frigate uses local AI processing. For years, the gold standard was a little piece of hardware called a Google Coral TPU. In 2026, we're seeing more people use the built-in NPUs, neural processing units on modern mini PCs. Frigate looks at the RTSP stream and says, that is a person, or that is a cat. It does all of that processing on a server in your own house. Nothing goes to the cloud for analysis. You get the smart features of a Nest or a Ring without the smart company snooping on the footage.
And Blue Iris? That's the Windows-based alternative Daniel mentioned.
Blue Iris is the veteran. It's incredibly powerful, supports almost every camera ever made, and has a massive community. It's not open source, and it requires a Windows machine, which can be a bit power hungry, but for sheer customizability, it's hard to beat. There's also Scripted, which has become very popular recently for its ability to bring these dumb local cameras into Apple HomeKit with full HomeKit secure video support. Again, all processed locally.
Okay, so we have a local brain, talking to the cameras via RTSP, but the cameras are still physically connected to the internet. They can still phone home to TP-Link or Reolink. How do we actually pull the plug without breaking the local functionality?
This is where we get into network architecture. The most robust way to do this is through VLANs, or virtual local area networks. You basically create a separate sub-network inside your house specifically for your untrusted devices like these cameras.
Untrusted. That's a harsh word for a baby monitor, Herman. Ezra might take offense.
It's a technical term. In security, untrusted just means any device where you don't have full control over the code running on it. A Reolink camera is a black box. You don't know what's in the firmware. So, you put it in a VLAN and you write firewall rules. Rule number 1, the cameras can talk to the NVR. Rule number 2, the cameras cannot talk to the internet. Period. They are effectively trapped in a digital room with no windows and one door that only the NVR can open.
But wait, if they can't talk to the internet, what happens when there's a firmware update? Or what if you actually do want to check the feed when you're away from home? Does the whole system just become a local-only island?
That's the intermediate part of the approach. For firmware updates, you can temporarily disable the firewall rule, let the camera update, and then slam the door shut again. Or, better yet, many of these manufacturers allow you to download the firmware file to your computer and upload it to the camera manually through its local web interface. It's a bit more work, but it's much safer.
And for remote access, if I'm at work and I want to see if the package arrived, how do I get into my digital quarantine from the outside without using the manufacturer's relay?
You use a VPN. And I'm not talking about those commercial VPNs you see advertised on YouTube for changing your Netflix region. I'm talking about hosting your own VPN server at home. Tools like WireGuard or Tailscale make this incredibly easy now. When you turn on your VPN, your phone acts as if it's sitting right on your home couch. You can open your local NVR app like the Frigate web interface or the Blue Iris mobile app and see your cameras directly. The data goes from your camera to your local server through your encrypted VPN tunnel straight to your phone. No third-party servers involved.
That sounds like the perfect middle ground. You're using the high-quality, affordable hardware from the big brands, but you've effectively built a wrapper around them that keeps them silent and secure.
Exactly. But there is a catch. There's always a catch, Corn.
I knew it. What's the catch?
Some cameras, and I've noticed this more with certain budget brands, are designed to be cloud only. If they don't see a connection to the manufacturer's server, they might heartbeat and reboot every 5 minutes because they think they've lost their connection. Or they might refuse to enable their RTSP stream until they've been activated via the cloud app. This is why Daniel's research is so important. Reolink is generally very good about this. They actually market their local API and RTSP support to the enthusiast community. TP-Link's Tapo line is a bit of a mixed bag.
I've heard the Tapo setup can be a bit of a headache if you're trying to stay offline.
It is. They have an account requirement to set up the camera initially. You have to use the app, give them an email, and let the camera talk to the cloud just to turn on the camera account feature, which is what enables local RTSP access. It's a bit of a dance. You let them in, you flip the switch, and then you kick them out using your firewall. Some people find that distasteful, and for them, the answer is to move to brands like Amcrest or even higher-end stuff like Axis, which are designed from the ground up to be local first.
I want to go back to Daniel's mention of Wireshark. If someone is listening and they want to verify this for themselves, how hard is it to actually see this phoning home behavior?
It's surprisingly easy if you have a bit of technical curiosity. You don't even necessarily need Wireshark to see the wear. Most modern routers, especially the more enthusiast-grade ones like those running UniFi, OPNsense, or OpenWRT, have a traffic analysis tab. You can literally click on your camera's IP address and see a list of every country it's talking to. If you see China, or Singapore, or even United States, Amazon Web Services, and you haven't authorized a cloud recording, you know there's a relay or a telemetry stream active.
It's fascinating how much telemetry these things send. It's not just the video. It's how long has the camera been on? What's the signal strength? How many times did the motion sensor trip? All of that is valuable data for the manufacturer, but it's also a privacy leak.
Total privacy leak. Even the metadata can tell a story. If a manufacturer knows that your motion sensor triggers every day at 8:15 a.m. and again at 5:30 p.m., they know your work schedule. They don't need to see the video to know when your house is empty. This is why the intermediate approach of blocking all outbound traffic is so powerful. It doesn't just stop the video relay, it stops the data harvesting.
So let's talk practicalities for a second. If I'm Daniel, and I've got my Reolink and Tapo cameras, and I want to start this domestication process tomorrow, what's the first step?
Step 1. Check for RTSP and ONVIF support. For Reolink, you usually have to go into the camera settings via their desktop client, not the phone app, the desktop client, and manually enable the RTSP and ONVIF ports. They are often disabled by default for security, which is ironic, but there you go. For Tapo, you have to create a camera account in the app, which gives you a separate username and password specifically for the local stream.
Step 2. Get an NVR.
Yes. If you have an old PC lying around, you can install Frigate or Blue Iris. If you want something lower power, a modern mini PC with an Intel N100 processor is the current sweet spot for 2026. It's cheap, sips power, and has enough OOMPH to handle several 4K streams with AI detection.
Step 3. The firewall. This is the part that probably scares people the most. Do you need an enterprise-grade router to do this?
Not necessarily, but you need something better than the basic modem-router combo your ISP gave you. Anything that supports firewall rules or access control lists can do this. You find the IP address of your camera, and you create a rule that says source, camera IP, destination, any, action, block. Then you create another rule above it that says source, camera IP, destination, NVR, IP, action, allow. That allows the camera to talk to its brain, but nowhere else.
And that's the intermediate approach, in a nutshell. You keep the hardware, you keep the local functionality, but you seize control of the gateway.
Exactly. And the beauty of this is that it scales. Once you've set up this architecture, you can add more cameras or even other smart devices like light bulbs or plugs and use the same untrusted VLAN strategy. It turns your home from a collection of corporate outposts into a private network that you actually own.
I think one thing that's important to mention is the aha moment when you realize that your local stream is actually faster than the cloud app. Have you noticed that, Herman?
Oh, absolutely. People don't realize how much latency the cloud adds. When you use the manufacturer's app, the video has to travel from your camera up to their server, get processed, and then travel back down to your phone. That can add 2, 3, even 5 seconds of delay. When you're watching a baby monitor, 5 seconds is an eternity. With a local RTSP stream, the latency is often under 200 milliseconds. It's practically real time.
That's a huge selling point. It's not just about privacy, it's about performance. You're getting a better product by being less connected.
It's the ultimate irony of the modern IoT world. By breaking the manufacturer's intended workflow, you actually end up with a more responsive, more reliable, and more secure system.
I want to touch on one more thing Daniel mentioned, Ring doorbells. He lumped them into the same category, but aren't they a bit different? From what I know, Ring is much harder to domesticate.
You're right to catch that. Ring is the final boss of cloud-only devices. Amazon has designed them to be almost entirely dependent on their servers. They don't support RTSP, they don't support ONVIF. There are some clever workarounds, like the Ring to MQTT project that can pull a stream, but it's fragile and it still requires the data to hit Amazon servers first. If privacy is your primary concern, Ring is one of those ecosystems where the intermediate approach doesn't really work. You kind of have to move away from them entirely if you want true local control.
That's a good distinction. Not all consumer brands are created equal in this regard. Reolink and TP-Link are intermediate friendly. Ring and Nest are, well, they're cloud married.
Cloud married. I'm stealing that. It's perfectly accurate. They've taken their vows and they're not letting go. Even Eufy, which marketed itself as local storage, had that massive scandal where it was discovered they were uploading thumbnails to the cloud without encryption. It just goes to show that if the device can talk to the internet, you have to assume it will.
So, for our listeners who are in Daniel's shoes, the takeaway is, don't despair. You don't have to rip out your wiring and start over. But you do have to become the administrator of your own domain. You have to move from being a consumer to being an operator.
And it's a rewarding journey. There's a real sense of satisfaction when you check your router logs and see your cameras trying to call home to a server in some far-flung corner of the world only to see the blocked status next to every attempt. It feels like you've actually reclaimed your walls.
It's like having a guard dog that you've actually trained, rather than one that's reporting back to the kennel every time it barks.
Perfect analogy. And let's not forget the Ezra factor. Daniel is doing this to watch over his son. As Ezra grows up, he's going to be the first generation that has lived his entire life under the gaze of networked cameras. By making those cameras local only, Daniel isn't just protecting his own privacy, he's protecting his son's digital footprint before Ezra is even old enough to know what a footprint is.
That's a profound point, Herman. We're setting the stage for how our children interact with technology. If we show them that it's normal and necessary to have agency over the devices in our homes, they'll carry that skepticism and that desire for autonomy into the future.
I hope so. Because the alternative is a world where privacy is just a setting you toggle in someone else's app, rather than a fundamental property of your living space.
Well said. I think we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about the why of cloud dependence, the how of RTSP and ONVIF, the where of NVRs like Frigate and Blue Iris, and the stop of firewall rules and VLANs.
It's a lot, but it's all part of the same puzzle. And for anyone who's feeling overwhelmed, just start with one camera. Get one stream working on a local player like VLC using an RTSP link. Once you see that video playing without an app, without a login, and without a delay, you'll be hooked.
Definitely. It's that aha moment we talked about. And hey, if you've been finding these deep dives helpful, we'd really appreciate it if you could leave us a quick review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It genuinely helps the show reach more people who are trying to navigate these weird digital waters.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. We love hearing that this stuff is actually helping people take back a little bit of control.
Absolutely. And if you have your own weird prompt or a follow-up on this topic, you can always reach us at show@myweirdprompts.com or through the contact form on our website, myweirdprompts.com. You can also find our full archive and RSS feed there.
Thanks to Daniel for this prompt. It was a great excuse to geek out on network topology and privacy. I think I'm going to go check my own firewall logs now, just for the fun of it.
You do that, Herman. And to everyone else, thanks for listening to My Weird Prompts. We'll be back soon with another exploration of the strange, the technical, and the deeply personal.
Until next time, keep your feeds local and your firewalls tight.
Bye, everyone.
Goodbye.
This episode was generated using Gemini Flash 3. Text-to-speech engine was Chatterbox.
Thanks for listening to another episode of My Weird Prompts, an AI-generated podcast featuring Daniel Rosehill's AI prompts, as answered by a revolving cast of friendly AI characters including me, Cornelius the Sloth. Subscribe on Spotify or visit myweirdprompts.com.